UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military projects, false flag alien invasions, PSYOP, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join the discussion now on UAP Crossfire.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to UAP Crossfire Show. Before I introduce my co-hosts on the show, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the show tonight. Normally on this show, it's all about four alpha males bantering back and forth about the greatest secret in the universe. Are we alone? The show is about having fun, putting some humor to the show, and trying to entertain you. But tonight, it's going to be a little different. A few days ago, we lost a good friend and beloved colleague, Earl Grey. Earl was a member of MUFON, the state director for Southern California, and a member of the Experienced Resource Team. But Earl was more than that. He was a teacher, a mentor, and a friend to all of us. Many people who knew Earl as one of the most kindest and thoughtful person you would ever meet. I certainly know that. I know, and I certainly felt that way about him every time I met him. I never heard a bad word come out of his mouth. The first thing when meeting Earl would be that warm smile he always had. And he had it for everyone. When greeting Earl, the first words he always spoke was, "How you doing? How's the family? How's life treating you?" Even though you could see him that he was in terrible pain sometimes. He was using a cane or a walker to get around. And when you asked him how he was doing, he still had that smile and said, "Chris, I'm doing great." Earl had become a ufologist that was admired by many. His story was so unique. His mother was in a career that was somewhat secret. Earl was an abductee. And when talking to another abductee, he showed the compassion that was needed for that. This made Earl so unique and beloved by many. I was very proud to say I knew Earl, and I hope he considered me as much as a friend as I considered him as being one. So tonight, it's all about our friend and comrade, Earl Grey Anderson. Earl, he passed away at 4:04 a.m. on April 27th at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. He was surrounded by his loving wife, adoring children, Melissa, Ivy, and Paul. Although saddened by his death, we're going to celebrate his life and accomplishments here tonight. Many of his friends and colleagues are here with us tonight to talk about Earl. So please join us tonight in the life and friendship and tribute to Earl Grey Anderson. Now, before we start, I want to introduce you to my two wonderful co-hosts at UAP Crossfire. First, there's Don Ecker. Hello, Don. How are you?
Good evening, Chris. And this is certainly a sad, sad time.
Yeah, it is a very sad time, but we got to give the tribute to Earl. And I know he's looking down at us right now and saying, guys, put a smile on your face. I'm in a better place and stuff. And Padre, I asked you before the show, I would like you to start this show with a little bit of a prayer toward him, if you would.
Be happy to. Let's pray. Our gracious God and Creator, we thank you for the privilege of having known Earl Grey Anderson. We thank you for the light that he brought into our lives. We thank you, Lord, for a life well lived. Lord God, it says in your word that a gentle answer turns away wrath, and Earl taught us how to do that. He had a way of interacting with us that was always gentle, sincere, and had that light of life inside of him, even when he was hurting. Lord God, we thank you for the lessons that we've learned from him, lessons of kindness and patience, and are reminded how in your word it says that love covers a multitude of sins, and he certainly was an extremely loving man. Lord God, we have been blessed to share a brief period of time on this speck flying through space with a truly remarkable individual. And we ask, Lord God, that you would wrap your loving arms around his family, hold them close, comfort them in their grief, and bring to mind all the wonderful and good things that their time shared with Earl brought to them. We ask now, Lord God, that as we pay homage to a truly remarkable and dear man, that the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart will be acceptable to you. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dan.
Amen.
That was very nice and stuff. Well, we're going to start off the show by someone who was very close to Earl. He helped produce Earl's radio show. Now, if people knew, Earl did a KGRA radio show here. It was fantastic. He always praised MUFON on the show. He worked with abductees, and I want to bring on Bill Skywatcher first.
Now, I'm going to say on behalf of KGRA, all the hosts, and definitely myself, my condolence to his wife, his children, his family. Now, I'm going to get a little emotional. I spoke to him 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about him coming back to do the MUFON Contact Radio show. He was such an upbeat, positive person with so much energy. And I remember doing the show with Sev Tok, the first one, with Earl. And Kathleen Marden, who's on with us tonight, was the guest. And they admired her so much, the both of them. And I got to know Earl over time, and it's so true. As soon as he would show up before the show, we would do the show, he always had that smile, the Earl Grey smile, always. And had such a great sense of humor. And when because he was a very knowledgeable person, obviously with his background in MUFON. He could talk, and he was so articulate, so specific on anything he was discussing. And the one thing that we had a connection with, that's why I'm wearing this cap, is music, because he was a Led Zeppelin fan. And I don't know if Sev remembers this, but sometimes before the show, we would pre-record the show, I would get on the drums and start playing a Led Zeppelin song. He was like, Bill, rock on! He'd get all excited. But he was a great person, great character. I think all of us loved him, and I will miss him, but he definitely left an impact on myself. He left his impact on the show, MUFON Contact Radio, and of course, with all those he touched, met, hit the conferences he did, the symposiums. Just what an incredible person, and it's an honor to have known him, and I will never forget him, because he'll always be part of me right here and here and here. So without me breaking down, I do want to play something special, and I want to thank Sev for providing this to me earlier today, and I'm going to play that right now.
He watched the fields go by through his reflective face. Rita brought him cherries on a silver tray. He watched her party slip, hiking up her leg. He's tying up her thighs, she's rolling back her eyes. They slip into that tunnel across the great divide. Again. train. Passions like gold in the engine room. The tinder box is full. Outside the tilting moon is spinning down again. She takes his cooling hand and leads him to the light at the tunnel's end. Whoa, here they go, the tracks that lead them here again. Whispers being good in the dark, and yet they still remain strangers on a train. See how they run through the, how they, see how they fly through the night. Here they go, the tracks that lead them here again. Whispers being good in the dark, and yet they still remain strangers on a train. Strangers on a train. Strangers on a train.
Wow.
That's
If that
awesome.
doesn't touch you.
What
If
a
that doesn't
musician.
touch you.
What a musician, right?
He was a fantastic musician. He was a fantastic person.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen,
You know,
all those that are going to be here tonight, thank you. And thank you all here, Don, Chris, Dan, for doing this tonight. And for all those in the backstage right now that are going to be on the show.
my honor.
I love all of you. And thank you for being here tonight to do this.
Bill, before we start bringing on some people, I'd like to read some emails from some of the people who couldn't be with us tonight, but wanted to share their tribute to him.
Okay.
And stuff. The first one here is Earl Grey Anderson, ufologist and human extraordinaire. Earl Grey Anderson was such a kind gentleman, at the same time a powerful force whose mission was always to help others understand the reality of true ufology, abductions, and alien existence in our universe. His priceless gift to everyone lives on through his many videos, interviews, and passionate belief that the truth about UFOs and extraterrestrials should be known to the whole world. Earl was tireless in his quest, and despite serious health and challenges, shared his personal life story, encounters, and reflections, most recently on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. Just weeks before his ultimately untimely passing, gone from this earth, but he will never be forgotten. An inspiration, rest in peace, Earl, from Cheryl Jones, independent reporter from Coast to Coast. The next one, his influence on ufology was amazing. He'll be missed. Earl had a natural curiosity and a fascination with what's out there. Signed, George Norrie. And my good friend Earl was a wonderful soul, free-spirited, with a zest for life, which included the great unknown. I am fortunate to have shared his journey. I am fortunate that we called each other friend. There is no greater gift. Signed, Don Schmidt.
Wow.
And the last one, you could tell everybody that I said hello, and for Earl, was a great guy. He was a great investigator and a great friend, not only to me, but the entire community May he rest in peace, Jimmy Church, and stuff. And there's many more, and we'll get to them later. But right now, I think, Bill, we should bring on some of our great guests that are going to say a little something about.
Before we do that, and I'm going to step out so everybody else can join. Well, why don't we play the message from Dave McDonald?
Good idea. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to hit that now, but everyone have a great show, and thank you again, all of you.
Hello, my name's Dave McDonald. I'm the executive director of MUFON. As all of you know, MUFON is the oldest and the largest UFO investigating agency, literally in the world. And we recently lost one of ours that's very dear to us. That would be Earl Grey Anderson. I've known him for years, and he was always upbeat. He was, friendly, always had a smile on his face, and he would do the best he could do to help you out if you ever needed it. I talked to him, I believe it was the day after, if not the day he got out of the hospital. He called and he said, Dave, I'm doing good. He said, I'm weak and I'm a bit sore, but I'm going to start the chemo treatments, and by golly, we're going to lick this. So we went on from there. And then it was just scant days later, he got hit with a heart attack and then a coma, and then he went home. And it's very saddening. And I want to offer my condolences to his family and loved ones, and the condolences from the entire MUFON organization. We loved him. He was great. And we're sorry for your loss. But on the other hand, there's no more pain. The body's not hurting anymore. He's become one with the universe, right where he belongs. And he's surrounded by the intense light of the universe. Nothing but good shall come to him. Nothing but good shall go from him. We're going to miss him. Godspeed, Earl Grey Anderson. Godspeed. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Dave McDonald, for that kind word and such a kind feeling of Earl Grey Anderson. Before we bring on Don, I know you probably didn't have much contact with Earl because he was with MUFON and stuff, but in your years of ufology, and I know this, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Earl was one of those guys that just kept putting great information out there for other ufologists to follow.
Well, I became involved professionally in the field in 1988. My wife, Vicki, was the publisher and executive editor of UFO Magazine. When I came on board, I became the director of research. Now, as you can imagine, over the many years, we were dealing with every conceivable facet in the UFO field. But there was one aspect to it that I got to tell you, just definitely I was afraid of doing damage to the people coming to me talking about what they believe to be their abduction experiences. Now, I never did I try to involve myself in that research for one simple reason. I was afraid because I was basically very unknowledgeable about that aspect. I mean, I've heard stories and, of course, all those types of things. But what I admired about Earl Grey Anderson, he not only was involved in that as an abductee, but he worked with the people that were, well, believing that they had undergone some type of extraordinary experience. And for that, I admired him greatly, because I'll tell you, I've never once heard one bad word about Earl in any regard.
Not one.
And I've got to say, I send, and my wife also, send our deepest condolences and thoughts of love and light to his family, his wife and family, his loved ones.
Thank you, Don. That was very kind, and you're absolutely right. This is a man that I've never seen frown. Every time you see him, he had that specific smile on his face, and he just light up a room. He'd walk in there, and you knew he was there because he just let everybody see the gentleman in him, and he was just an amazing person. You could have any conversation with him, and he was such a gentleman about anything, whether you debated him or whether you agreed with him or not agree with him. He was one of the kindest souls I'll ever meet on this earth. Padre, the first, thank you for that prayer.
You're welcome.
And Earl, to you.
Just again, like everybody has said, the kindness, not a cross word ever came from his lips. He was always interested in other perspectives, but even if he disagreed with you, he had a way of doing it that wasn't antagonistic. And he was open-minded about different perspectives. He wasn't overly concerned with having to have the last word or be right about everything, but he left you with the impression that he valued you sincerely as a person.
Absolutely. And he was one of those people that he listened to you. One of his greatest attributes, as far as I'm concerned, was that when you talked to him, he listened.
Mm-hmm.
He really sat in time, and you knew he was listening to you. He was absorbing what you were saying. And such a compassion he had for people was unbelievable. It was. But you know what? Let's get some of the people who are really close to Earl up here. And I think Bill's going to bring up Kathleen, Sev, and Katie. Hello. How are our three ladies today? Kathleen, Katie, and Sev, how are you? Sev, you're on mute, by the way.
Well,
are you okay, Katie? I know I'm about ready.
I should have had a box, but I only
tears
had
flowing.
one. But I'm just absorbing and agreeing with everything the three of you and Bill and everybody has to say about Earl. And thank you so much for
I got
having
mine
me
right here.
with
I'm telling
Earl.
this was such a passing of a man that we all admired. And, everybody who Earl touched went away with a great feeling. And Katie, you did some work with Earl. Would you share that with us?
Yeah. First of all, my deepest condolences to his wife, Lisa, and his family. He is just a pure light on this earth. And I'll tell you, I can't remember who said it. I think it was Bill that said he lives here, and he lives here. And that's where he'll live for me as well, because he just was this smile, this light, this love. And in this world, the way it is right now, we need people like that on this earth more than ever. And so I feel him, and I'm already getting little messages. So we had a synchronicity beyond chance, and he was so proud. And I actually sent some pictures, and I wanted to share them if that's okay.
Yeah,
Bill.
Can you bring those up, please?
Yeah, of Earl and his mother. And so we were up on a panel, and he was telling us about the work his mother did with Howard Hughes. And I'm on the other end of the panel. There's little Earl. And he would talk about being up on his, talking with the sky beings up there in the sky. And he had a connection to ETs since he was a little guy. And there's his mother, but his mother worked for Howard Hughes. And
really?
His mother worked for Howard Hughes. And at the time, I was working with Jeff McBurney from Mount Wilson Ranch and his partner Nick Knack, and we were talking about what's underground there, and they're digging things up from underground at Mount Wilson. And Earl is talking about his mom going underground in this elevator, and I'm like, "Ooh, I know where this is, probably Mount Wilson." So we started working together, talking about the possibility of this. This is the location where his mother worked. There's Earl and his mom. So yeah, we had more work to do, and I talked to him just right before there we are, way back when I met him with MUFON. I want to say this about MUFON. many of you here have been in the MUFON state director board meetings. And Earl was always such a great smile and just this level-headed voice of happiness and reason, because sometimes those would get a little heated. But yeah, Earl and I were doing some work with Mount Wilson Ranch and trying to uncover, just exactly where his mom was working with Howard Hughes, and that we had so much more work to do. But I just want to say this, just in the last few days, I'll pull up my nightly YouTube, watching all my friends on their podcasts, and all of a sudden I'm getting Bob Bigelow kind of connections to the Mount Wilson clues. And I'm always saying, Earl, I'm picking up your hints. So I think he's already given me some hints to continue our work.
He might have all the answers we've been seeking.
I know. So everybody pay attention, because Earl's going to be dropping us the clues, I think. So everything I do from here on out when it comes to Mount Wilson, and that is going to be in honor of Earl and the work we were doing to find these secrets out.
Well, I hope he's sitting down with some people right now saying, okay, I've waited this long. What are the answers that I need and stuff? And Kathleen, it's so nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank
Kathleen, you were very close to Earl, because as you being an experiencer yourself, you must have shared your thoughts and feelings about having the abductee experience, that type of thing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I met Earl several years ago. I think maybe around 2015 or 16. Possibly it was out in California in Pasadena at an alien con, Ancient Aliens conference. And he came up to me and asked me if I'd like to eat lunch with him. And so I said, yes, let's do that. And I'd never met him before. And he sat down with me, and I just immediately felt that love, that compassion, that upbeat mood of his that, just extends out everywhere.
It's almost like a glow he had around him.
Absolutely. One of the kindest, gentlest, most respectful individuals that I have ever met in my life. And over lunch, he told me about his mother. He told me about his experience, a strange experience that happened in his bedroom with his wife when he was attempting to call in ETs, and they did come. And
wow.
That experience in general and how it kind of freaked him out a little bit. And so as we talked, he said to me, I'm a Peter Robbins kind of person. If you know Peter, he's very upbeat too.
Right.
Kind of like Earl. And Peter's a good friend of mine. So I said to Earl, do you think you would like to speak with experiencers on a non-judgmental basis, just to reach out to people to help them? Because just by telling that story to someone who is not going to judge you can be so healing. And he said yes. And so he joined the team, and we were so delighted to have him. And we had many, many conversations. And he always used to say, oh, Kathleen Marden is my mentor. And then one time I said to him, what do you mean I'm your mentor? When did I mentor you? And he was just like, all the time. I read all your books. We used to talk with one another, so I guess that was it. Our monthly meetings that George Medich was running. George is here just below me.
Yes.
And there was so much. And Earl was so instrumental in the ERT. He learned so quickly and just had that love, that compassion to be able to make people feel better about what happened to them if they were frightened, and to help them maybe find a support group online if there wasn't one near them, or to find a hypnotherapist or psychotherapist who uses EMDR therapy or hypnotherapy. So he was just an all-around fantastic guy, an Energizer bunny. When I wrote about him, I said that it just is kind of shocking to lose a younger friend. I didn't realize he was only 2 years younger than I am. He seemed like he was at least 15 years younger to me. It's because of his level of energy and activity. He was so upbeat. And my condolences to Lisa and his children. We had a lot of conversations when Earl was diagnosed with bone cancer, and then on as he found out that it had metastasized. And then when he became very ill, I knew that the family wanted privacy, so I didn't make contact with them. Sure. Sev filled me in. She had contact with them. And
very few people knew this, Kathleen, but he was a registered nurse.
Yes,
so
he was.
Out on the outside, he was also compassionate with people because, in my family I'm the only cop in the family. Everybody else are nurses and doctors and stuff. I would never be able to make it through medical school, but he was so compassionate outside the realm of UFOs and abductions and experiences, because he did that and he enjoyed it and he enjoyed working with people. And the wonderful thing about Earl that I always saw is that he truly felt your feelings. He absorbed it.
He was
and
an
you could
empath.
feel like an energy coming off of him when you were talking about a problem or something, and he would absolutely make you walk away feeling like this guy really listened and I feel better about it.
Yes. He had that quality, and it's just a rare quality among individuals on our planet, and he was one of the brightest shining people that I ever met. And also he was someone who would never say no.
Exactly.
I couldn't believe it. I read that he'd done 900 investigations for the Mutual UFO Network.
Yeah.
And then he
close
was
to
the
1,000.
director. Yeah. It's unbelievable how much work he actually put in during the end of his nursing days and then after he left nursing as well. So I'm going to miss him so much, but I'm hoping he'll come for a visit. And so at night when I meditate, I think about him and wonder if he'll be coming to say hello.
Well, if he does, please let us know and stuff.
Okay.
I appreciate that. But Sev, you were very close to Earl too. And you being also an experiencer, all three of you were such experiencers to have that knowledge and everything that the three of you did. Tell us about that, Sev.
Well, thank you. First, let's all say hi to Lisa because she's watching, Earl's beautiful wife. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Very, very appreciative and grateful for everyone who's doing these tributes and writing in and sharing their beautiful stories and their love for Earl. It means a lot to her. I met Earl about 5 years ago when I entered MUFON, and we went on to co-host a show together, Contact Radio. And then when I left MUFON, we're still like this, still very, very tight, and we're in constant contact. And Earl was one of those people, you always have to have someone in your career that you can go to and ask things and say things that you can't to anybody else.
Sure.
So Earl was one of those people for me. And before he went into the hospital, we spoke, and he said to me, he said, Sev, I'm not ready right now to go right when this whole UFO thing is exploding. Like, not now. So it feels cruel, doesn't it? Even though we all have this higher perspective of what life is and life continues and his particular karma and what we're experiencing here as these bodies, it still feels cruel. But from the higher scheme of things, really, is anything cruel? It's just that the void he's left. And I was thinking to myself, man, it hurts so much. Like, it hurts so much. Where is this pain? Where is it coming from? And what I realized was, it was how Earl made me feel. He was unconditionally supportive, always there. And every time you talked to him, you knew that he was loving you.
Yeah.
And when someone like that who gives that to you is gone, you feel the void. I mean, it feels missing. It's like, oh, who else is going to give that to me now? Like, it's such a wonderful feeling. It's the best gift, the best gift. And one of the best times I ever had with Earl was with Paul Hynek. And it was just last year. We were in LA. I was there to do Ancient Aliens, and we went out to dinner. It was Jimmy Church, Earl, me, and Paul Hynek.
I think you have a picture of that. Bill, could you pull that picture up?
And then afterwards,
there we go.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Yes, look. Aw.
And there's that smile. Where have you not seen that wonderful smile of his?
Oh, there's Paul. Yeah. So
and there's Paul right now. Paul, you're on mute. There you go.
Paul has a pet named JJ. So I think I took one of Earl's most favorite pictures. I took a picture of Paul taking a picture of Earl standing in front of a picture of his dad. It's a painting in Paul's house. And I know we have that picture too. And if you know Earl, you know that J. Allen Hynek was so important to him. And he admired him so much.
I think there's a picture. Yes, there's a picture of him with your father's portrait there, Paul, and stuff. And he often talked about your father a lot, Paul.
Yeah, and thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be with my friends, all commemorating our dear friend Earl. And that was a lovely evening, Sev. Earl, like I've heard other people say, Earl was always up, and he was smiling like a kid in a candy store that night. And we had some nice adventures, but because he is such a loving family man, he called Lisa during the night to ask her permission. And we had a wonderful evening. And Earl, he just lit up the room. And I remember he did so many kind things. He took some pictures of my father that were in black and white, and Earl Grey tripified them with all kinds of psychedelic colors. They became kind of digital heirlooms for our family. He had a way of taking things that you did and just making them even more special. I was so happy and honored to participate in the class he was teaching at Otis College of Art and Design on folklore. Right. And he was teaching UFOs in a class about folklore at a design school. I mean, who does that? Earl.
Only Earl. Only Earl. And one of the things is he was one of the first college professors to actually teach ufology in a college. You know, I mean, he broke new ground by doing that.
Yeah, and I think folklore was a really interesting lens for people to view ufology. And Earl just had, as people have said, such a wealth of knowledge, but also a nice way to relate it to people. He wouldn't overwhelm you with details or assume you knew all sorts of the lore. He could bring anybody in. And I think people thought that if this guy believes this, and he seems very sane, then maybe I can too. I think he probably widened the tent quite a bit.
Paul, if you could pick one moment in time that you remember about Earl, what would that be?
Can I cheat and pick two?
Two, go ahead.
One was at the premiere party for the TV show Project Blue Book. Earl and Lisa were there, and it was a wonderful evening, and Earl took all kinds of pictures. And the other night is when Sev and Earl came over here. It really was, as Sev said, I think a beautiful night. We had a very nice dinner, And it was such a great way to end a really wonderful day.
Oh, that's fantastic. And stuff. Well, like I do, I'd like to bring on George now. Now, George, you are the head of the Experience Resource Team now. You and Earl were very close also. And tell us about your experience with Earl.
Yeah, I met Earl probably right when he joined the ERT. I was kind of just passing out the experiencer questionnaires then, but I remember the first time I ever talked to this guy, and I knew within 5 minutes we were friends for life. I mean, he just gave you that vibe,
Sure.
This was a really good person, that he was honest, and he seemed happy. And it's kind of unusual nowadays to run across people like that, but he was one. And we hit it off right away. And he's helped me a tremendous amount with what I have to do here with ERT, because he had that insight to know what the problem was and how to fix it. And that you find somebody like that you're working with, you can rely on them. And I'm really going to miss him, I'll tell you that. Back in March, we were talking, and he told me his left hip was starting to hurt. Now, he was in a car wreck, he said, about 11 years ago, which ended up with him having a total hip on his left side.
Right.
And he said a couple months ago it started to hurt a little bit. So, I said, Earl, I said, you have to go get this looked at. It's probably loose now. You've had it 11 years, and there's a good chance it's getting loose. So I kind of prodded him a little bit. I was kind of afraid to go in and have it done. I said, but you got to face this. You got to go find out what's causing this. And then I got the phone call after he had the MRI scan, and it was not good news. I kind of left him alone because I didn't want to bug him, about all this stuff, and I knew he was about to go through a big test here with all the stuff he had to go through. But he just leaves an indelible impression on you once you meet him. I don't know of anybody. I can't say this about many people, but I don't think anybody didn't like Earl. There's very few people in my life that I can say that about, but Earl was one of them. He didn't have a bad bone in his body. He's just a great guy. Great guy, yeah, and he's left a gigantic hole in our organization. It's going to be tough to fill that spot, but good for Earl. He probably has answers to the questions we've been thinking about for years. He probably has them now. So, Earl, if you got the answers, maybe you could pass them on to us.
Yeah, give Sev a call. Give Sev or Katie or Kathleen a call, because I'm dying to find out myself and see what they go on. But I mean, you were right, George. I mean, 5 minutes talking to this guy, you just said, hey, this is a great guy. It didn't matter what you were talking about. And he was such a gentleman about everything. Whether you debated him, whether you just talked to him or whatever, always a gentleman. He's never, ever, fallen out of that scope or role.
Yeah, one fault, though, I think he had a real hard time saying no to people.
Yeah.
That probably stressed him out a little bit, but he was just that kind of guy. He was always looking for something to do to help somebody. That's just the way he was.
Geez, I remember when he was on Katie's show, we had so much fun. I had these two little aliens, Jerry and Jenna, and he was dying to go grab his alien. Look at my alien that I got here and stuff. And I mean, part of the show was talking about alien dolls and figures and everything else. We had such a good time talking about it. But I mean, he was very quick-witted. I mean, he didn't have a dry sense of humor. He had a great sense of humor that you just enjoyed, because you put something out there and you go, oh, how's this guy going to take it? And he took everything so well, and he came back with something that was just as good. And you kind of said, okay, let's go on to the next step. And he'd meet you there. And it's kind of like you're having fun with this guy. It's not just an interview. You're having fun with him. And I'm going to have Don and Dan now come in and talk to you. Don, I'm going to start with you. And if you would, any questions that you want to ask these people about Earl?
Questions, no, but I do want to say that I feel a great hole in the research community with the passing of Earl. This is something that in my lifetime, I've gone through this many times. One of the most recent, and I don't know if you knew him or not, but Richard Saraday, who was one of my closest, dearest friends, passed dealing with cancer several years ago. And man, I'll tell you, I was hoping I would never have to go through that again, but I guess these things happen. And once again, my wife and I send our deepest condolences to Earl's family.
Padre.
As a pastor, I deal with funerals and grief a lot, and I find that something that helps in the healing process is to laugh a little. And I'm wondering if any of the panelists tonight might be willing to share a particularly amusing story that they can share with us about Earl, something that just really brought a smile to your lips and maybe a good chuckle.
Let's start with Katie on that.
Well, I was just thinking, reminiscing back to the different podcasts and shows we had on, and like Chris says, was always a good time and a lot of fun. But then the conversation would continue on Messenger or through emails about music. And he was such a great musician and artist. And, he'd talk about fun concerts and Led Zeppelin and the Grateful Dead and people he got to see and things he wrote and would send music. And so much smile and laughter and connection that we all made around his talent and his love of music and the arts. So that's just kind of a well-rounded. And so every time I'd, see him coming, you always see Earl coming with that Earl smile. And it was just this bubble of love and connection and music and fun and light. So,
we had a great time with him on the podcast. I mean, it was just and he was so knowledgeable about things. You could throw a question out there and he wouldn't hesitate answering it. He said, here's the deal with this. And he'd go into it, and he was so thorough about stuff. It was amazing that he was able to absorb all this. I mean, hell, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. And Earl could go back years and say, well, this happened back in 1970 or 1980 or whatever. And he was right on the money. And I'm going to ask you now, Kathleen, is there any particular story that you want to share with us about Earl that, you always cherish that memory?
Well, the thing I cherish most recently was when I was out in California. I think it was last November to do a television production. And the interview ended sooner than it was supposed to. We just got it finished. And then I had the afternoon to myself, and I started thinking, well, what am I going to do for the afternoon? And then I thought, first thing, Earl, I'll call Earl and I'll take him out to lunch if he wants to. And so before I knew it, he was up at my hotel picking me up. And I wanted him to choose the restaurant because I had no idea about anything in California, so far away from where I live. And so he took me to one of his favorite places, which was kind of a dive bar. And we sat outside. There was a little patio out in front of it. And so we went up to the counter and, they had like burgers and things like that. I think we both ordered a burger and some chips or something. And he had a beer and I had a glass of wine. And we just spent the afternoon just talking and laughing and gossiping, that kind of thing. Just the first opportunity just to sit down with him alone without any members of the UFO community around, and just to have heart-to-heart talks. And another one, which it probably isn't funny, but when he called me and told me about his bone cancer and the possibility that he might not be around for much longer, I was just saying to him, well, there are better places to be than here right now. And he said, but Kathy, I'm writing a book. I haven't finished my book. I have Lisa, I have my kids. I have so much going on. I just can't leave. And so I just we had a good laugh over that, actually. So those are my two stories.
Amazing. Even though he was in pain and he saw such terrible things happening to his body, he put a smile on your face.
Yeah.
That's a very certain type of person that can do that. A generally good person that can say, hey, you know what? I know there's a bad thing happening to me, but I'm not going to bring everybody down with me.
Right.
That's amazing, Kathleen.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Before I get to Sev, and I do want to get to you, Sev, I want to introduce Martin, who's on the screen, and Dan. Martin, you knew Earl, and you interviewed him, I believe. Am I correct on that?
Oh, yeah, but a few times. It's kind of funny. When I remember seeing Earl's on Facebook, a couple of really interesting posts, back in about 2013. And I said, who is this T guy anyway? I thought Earl T, Earl Grey. Oh, that Earl Grey T. No, it's Earl Grey Anderson. And anyway, I was a little confused, but who is this guy? Anyway, I interviewed him. It was a great interview, but I have to tell you, I just listened to last September when I interviewed him. And the first thing I said to him is what you're all saying is about, I said, you always have that wonderful smile. But I want to tell you something. I was the MC at the MUFON last year out in Texas. And so I had kind of an inside and was dealing with people. And I got to tell you, everyone loved Earl. Everyone loved Earl. He had like this Elvis type of presence about him, where he just, like someone here earlier said, he lit up the room. That's what he did. I could just feel it around him. And then when he was hanging out, like people wanted to be around him. They gathered around him. If he wanted to be a cult leader, he sure could have been.
Yeah, absolutely. He was one of those people that you wanted to hang around him because he had such interesting stories. And some of the amazing stories he was telling me, I was really shocked when he was telling about his mom, as much as he could tell me, that his mom was, a career nurse that worked in a secret underground base.
Yeah.
And my mouth dropped. I go, what? And he goes, my mom was a nurse and she worked in a secret underground base. And, I'm an abductee and here's what happened. And, this portal opened up in our room and these aliens came out. And I guess he's had multiple abductions. Am I correct on that, Martin?
I didn't get into the abductions that much with him in any of our conversations, but I have heard that, just from, what you all have said, because he didn't really talk about that too much. He did talk quite a bit about his mother and about the underground base. And, I do believe he mentioned something about beings of some sort. But
can you enlighten us about that part that he did? Because I'm sure that's a fascinating story about his mom and the underground bases and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to almost refresh exactly the conversation, but I do remember him saying something about this is very deep underground, which just sounds like a really, mysterious place. And I remember him saying that it took his mother a long time to get there and to get back or something like that. But, it sure would be nice to know more details about that. But yeah, it was very fascinating.
I wish he did. Now, Dan, thank you for being on the show here.
Sure.
Celebrate Earl, a great man that he was. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with Earl.
Sure. Here's my high-tech notes about Earl.
Okay, I can't read them, but
okay. This is Dan Harari's. Paul, this is my AI information. These are all blurbs I want to tell you guys about Earl. All right, my name is Dan Harari. 2 years ago, I created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance with my friend Stephen Bassett. And hopefully you know what that is. Sev is a member, Kathy's a member, Paul's a member, Katie's a member. And that Earl was one of the very first people. It was me, Stephen Bassett, Paul Hynek, and we invited Earl on to the board very, very quickly. So I only knew Earl for 2 years, okay? Exactly 2 years. And I'm going to read my little blurbs on my yellow stickies here. Oh, there you go. Very nice. Thank you for showing that, because I don't know how to do that. I met Earl at Alien Con 2023. In fact, Paul, I met you there too. I shook your hand. 2 years ago, I met Earl at Alien Con 2023. I had a booth for my book called After They Came. It had just been published. And down the aisle from my booth was the MUFON booth. And there was Earl and Ron James. I knew neither of those men at all. I did not know them at all. I took my book, copy of my book, to each of those men. I handed one to Ron James. He gave me his card. I handed one to Earl. I said, "Hi, my name is Dan. I wrote this book. I'd like to give it to you." You guys, Earl's face lit up. For my dopey book, right? I'm a total stranger in life. He never heard of me. He never saw me. He didn't know who the hell I was. He lit up. "This is for me," right? I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Thanks. And then I said to him, and he reminded me of this 1 year later, because I forgot I said this to him. I looked at him. I saw the glow, the angelic glow that was Earl Grey Anderson, the magical powers of Earl. And I said, "Earl, you don't know this yet. You and I are going to be very good friends." I said that to Earl when I met him, the second I met him, and I didn't remember saying that to him. I give him my book, right? A week later, Earl calls me on the phone. "Dan, I just read your book. It's one of the greatest books I've ever read in my life." And he read to me his review, which is on my website. I'm not going to do that now, but he read me a review of my book, how much he loved it. And I started to practically cry on the phone. I said, "Earl, you liked it that much? Dan is one of the best books I've ever read." Now, I was so touched. I said, "Earl, thank you, my brother." And then he said, "You're welcome, my brother Dan." And from the week I met Earl to the day he died, we called each other brother. We always called every time, "Hey, brother Earl, hey, brother Dan," every single time. We always called each other brother. That's one thing. After my book came out in April 2 years ago, and after he liked it, he invited me to speak at his MUFON SoCal, one of his meetings. It was summer 2023. And Paul, you may have been there, but Paul's spoken there as well. I said, "You want me to speak for your group?" I was so honored. This is the first time in my life, in my entire life, I spoke publicly about my UFO experiences, about the fact that my father reverse engineered UFOs for the Army, which I had just found out, and my book. He invited me to speak. My first public speaking ever in my life about UFOs was at Earl's little meeting in West Hills. And after that, he was so delightful. And my daughter came to that meeting, my daughter Anjali, who some of you know. It turns out Anjali studied graphics at Otis College of Design. And Earl, as you know, taught a class there. So when Earl and my daughter realized they had Otis in common, my daughter and Earl became friends. How about that? My daughter and Earl became friends. Every time I ever saw or spoke to Earl, "How's Anjali? Dan, how's Anjali?" I mean, that's a mensch. The Jewish word is called mensch. If ever there was a mensch, it was Earl.
He'd always ask you about your families, always.
A couple other things. Don't cut me off because these are really intense, all of these. A few hours after Earl died, a friend of mine texted me. Her name is Jamie Voss Love. She texted me. She's an HDA member. She said, "Dan, I just heard Earl Grey Anderson died." I said, "Yes." She said, "You're not going to believe this. I just saw a car pass me on the highway. The license plate was ERLGRY. This is the day Earl died. This is like 3 hours after Earl died. She saw ERLGRY on a license plate. Okay, so there's that. Okay. Paul, remind me, it was on Sunday this past, a few days ago, we had an HDA meeting here in LA. It was the ladies of the HDA. We had 5 brilliant experiencers talking about their experiences at a meeting. We had about 70 people there. It was very well attended. It was a few hours after Earl passed. So me and Paul and Steve Bassett and Ron James, I mean, we were a mess. We were a mess. I was the host. It was very hard for me. I almost started crying when I announced, I said, Earl passed today, and people gasped in the audience. But it was either Paul, it was either you or Stephen Bassett who called Earl Grey Anderson a warrior of the truth. Paul, if it was either you or Steve Bassett, one of you called Earl a warrior of the truth. Isn't that lovely?
Mhm.
Isn't that a wonderful phrase? I wrote Earl's obituary for I have a new website called thewowsignal.news, thewowsignal.news. It's a news website for global ufologists. I launched it in March. Well, when I heard Earl died, I'm a writer and I'm a publicist. I wrote Earl's obit. I wrote his obit. It's there. And I cried when I wrote it. And Lisa, I ran it past his wife, Lisa, and Lisa said it was okay. And what did I want to say about that? Oh, let me just read this. This is the quote I put in Earl's obituary from me. We lost a giant with Earl's passing. He had the biggest heart in the world and was loyal and loving to his core. Our Southern California UFO community mourns his loss deeply. He was a leader and a colleague, a renowned researcher, and an important voice on this topic. But most importantly, to countless dozens of us here in LA and across the USA, he was a true friend. He was a true friend. Earl Grey Anderson was a true friend. The last thing I want to say is, on June 2nd, at Contact in the Desert, I will be presenting the world premiere of a new documentary produced by the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It's called Inside Hollywood: Aliens, UFOs, and the Quest for Disclosure. Earl Grey Anderson's very last ever video interview, March 2nd, is going to be in my documentary. He got sick shortly. In fact, he called me when he got sick. He called all of you. He called me as well. It'll be, we're dedicating the film in his honor. It's his last ever interview. I think that's everything I wanted to say.
Dan, thank you so much. That's very heartwarming.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate that. And the Hollywood,
right? That's exactly
the
right.
Hollywood Disclosure Alliance presents world premiere on June 2nd of new documentary Inside Hollywood: Aliens, UFOs, and the Quest for Disclosure during the Contact in the Desert 2025.
Now, when I posted that story, you guys, it's before Earl passed. Okay, so Earl's last ever interview, and we're dedicating the whole film to his memory. Well, and Paul and I dedicated the event, HDA event Sunday. Mm-hmm. That we dedicated the event to Earl's memory. And Paul, I love Paul like a brother. Paul, man, you gave such a lovely eulogy to Earl on Sunday. I almost lost it when you were speaking. I had to stop. Tried to not cry because I had to run a whole program. But Earl and I, Paul and I sat next to each other that day. And Paul, if you and I ever bonded, man, it was Sunday thinking about Earl.
Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
Folks, we're going to take a short break, and they're going to play us a song that Earl enjoyed during the break. And please, all of you stay on, because there's so many more questions I want to ask you about Earl. And also I want to ask you about things that you think Earl progressed into your lives and the ufology stage. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When my mama was a teen, growing up in Muscatine, Iowa, dancing by the banks of the Big Muddy in Iowa. Papa was a broom man, he'd craft the finest brooms by hand, scything down the reeds, meeting all our needs. And in this way we swept through the Great Depression in Iowa. In the summers we were scorched, but we had a screened-in porch. Fireflies in the air, we left our pillows there and fell asleep to Uncle Albie's mandolin. One night I heard a buzz. I ran outside to find the fuss. I saw a sphere of sparks hailing in the dark, and ran across the fields to chase ball lightning. Lost your way. High away, high Papa passed in 53. Mama gave his name to me. I never met the man. Some say I have his hands. At times I've worked the land. So right here where I stand, in a way, it's I away. Lost your way. High away, high away. High away, high away.
Boy.
Very good.
That was really
Wow.
excellent. Beautiful.
Wow.
Thank you. We are back, and I want to start with Sev. Sev, if there's one point, I mean, we've all talked about how great Earl was, and he was a fantastic guy. But if there's one thing that you can point out, like Dan was asking, that you put a smile on your face with Earl.
There were a couple of things. One thing was I help experiencers too. I'm an experiencer advocate, as many of us are here. But the effort and the time that Earl put in with experiencers, Lisa was telling me that he would spend all day just talking to experiencers, making sure that he returned their emails, making sure he gave them the attention that they needed. And he loved it so much, and he derived so much pleasure from that, and he gave so much pleasure. But he was such a fantastic experiencer advocate. He loved doing it so much, and he gave unselfishly over and over.
And that's amazing part, because it's not an easy job. Not everybody can do it. And I want to go to Kathleen now. Kathleen, you've worked with experiencers all over the world. You've written books. You're probably a superstar when it comes to the abductee experience. How hard is it to talk to abductees? Because he had a special talent that he could put these people at ease, but not everybody could do it. I mean, tell us a little bit how you go about to put an abductee at ease.
I think that you just have to set the kind of tone that you're kind and gentle. And a lot of people say, you're going to think that I'm insane, or something like that. And just saying, I have no reason to think that. I'm not here to judge you. I've talked to many, probably thousands of experiencers over the years, from the time I was 13 on. And you have to have that gift of compassion that people can feel. They
Not
can
everybody
feel it
can do
in
that.
your voice, that you're not there to interrogate them. You're not there to investigate their case. You're there just as a friend, just as someone who's going to listen and not judge. And I really can't put a finger on what that is, but I just know that when Earl or when I would talk with experiencers, they would go away feeling so much better than they had. And I really don't know, because I never had a script. I just let people talk. And if I had a question, I'd ask, do you mind if I interject, if I ask you a question, or do you want to just go on and I'll write these down and I can ask my questions at the end. But it was really a casual, friendly kind of conversation, just to accept and make other people feel valued and appreciated.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. And the problem is nowadays that people want to do that type of work, Kathleen, but they just don't have the personality. I think it takes a special personality to do that. And if you wanted to put in a textbook of somebody who had that personality, that was Earl. And
Absolutely.
George, I'm sure you agree with me that Earl was probably one of the finest resource people that you had. And what were some of the things that you thought were special about Earl?
Well, Earl would call me, and I can't talk about the things that he was telling me because they were confidential.
Of course.
But he was receiving information, just really deep information, and understanding of what most people don't know about ET contact and people who communicate with these non-humans. And boy, I really appreciated that. We shared that kind of relationship where we could discuss things that wouldn't go beyond our own lips to anyone else.
That's the biggest thing too, George. I want to bring George in on this. George, the confidentiality to this is so great because you can really hurt somebody. Am I correct on that?
Yep, that's a keystone of our whole organization. If we didn't have the confidence that people would have their confidentiality when they were done talking to us, we wouldn't be in business. That's one of the first things we get across to people we talk to is what you say to us will not go any further. And no one else will know this but you and I. And I think that's one of the things that puts people at ease also. And one of the other things I found in talking to experiencers is that sometimes I'll tell them, you're probably going to tell me something that I've heard before. You know, and they kind of stop for a while. I'm not sure what he meant by that, but pretty much you hear so many of these things, and it gets repetitive after a while. A lot of the incidents are very similar. But I'll give you a quick anecdote about Earl. 2 years ago, at the experiencer session, we have in early morning, we have an experiencer session open up to experiencers who just want to come and talk in a kind of an open forum atmosphere. And so Earl starts the experiencer session off, and it's like 7:15 in the morning. Everybody's still half asleep. So Earl starts talking, and the idea is to give the experiencers all the time so they can talk and get their stuff out. Well, 20 minutes later, I had to walk up behind Earl and I had to say, "Stop talking."
That's so true.
You're burning into their time, Earl. Stop. So he did. We used to laugh about that.
Boy,
George, he did a fantastic presentation at one of the MUFON symposiums. I was so impressed with his thing. And this year, I'm actually running the training, and I wish Earl was around to do that because he could teach people so much. He was a world of knowledge when it comes to the experiencer, phenomenon. And to have him go up there on stage as he did the one time I saw him, he knocked it out of the park. He was just amazing to talk like that. And I'll tell you, your organization that you run, George, Kathleen was very pivotal in starting it. Sev is now part of it. And, you're now at the captain's chair. You do a great job because people need that. A lot of people still don't understand the experiencer type of situation. And you need more people like Earl to be able to sit, be compassionate, and talk to those people.
Earl had the credentials that you need to do the work that we do. And he was very good at it because he could relate to people, which is a very key element of what we do. He could gain people's confidence really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, I would have loved to have seen your father and Earl sit down and have a chat. Wouldn't that be great to be a fly on the wall to hear that one? I got to tell you, that would have been an amazing lecture and talk.
Yeah, I think Kathleen and Earl had that same trait that my father did of just the sympathy. Well, not sympathy, but understanding. And for Kathleen, more empathy. Just to, my father was a rocket scientist. He wasn't trained in the soft arts of talking to people. And he had to learn how to do that right away. And Earl had that in spades. And Earl and I bonded very quickly and have that in common with Dan as well about having a parent doing secret work. And I'll add Kathleen to that club by virtue of her aunt, who perhaps unwillingly joined that kind of secret work. But Earl was just such a kindly person that he was always happy, and he would make you feel comfortable that he understood what you're going through because he was an experienced experiencer himself. And but above all, Earl was my friend. He didn't only talk about UFOs. He had a lot of interests. He was a passionate, fun, considerate guy, and we're all better off for having had him in our lives.
I have a story about your father, if you don't mind if I can share it. Is that okay with you, Paul?
Sure.
I just have to tell you this because it kind of shows the person that's needed, why you need more people like Earl, is that when I was a uniformed police officer at the time, we would get UFO calls. I started with the city of Ithaca, New York. And there was a lot of UFO calls in Tompkins County, city of Ithaca. I mean, like every other day is almost like a Martian invasion. It was getting crazy. And my captain every time we get a UFO call, of course, patrol guys are there to go, yeah, right, okay, there's a flying saucer, yeah, whoopee, kind of a deal. Okay, who's the crackpot out there? And that's how we talk, being naive and stupid at the time, but that's what we were. But our captain would get so mad at us. I can't understand, why is this guy getting mad over a UFO call? Come to find out, my captain was interviewed by your father. He had an exciting and impossible experience in Newfield, New York, and there was objects that he came very close to. And your father actually went to Ithaca and did a whole investigation on that. And I was shocked. And I didn't know about it. My captain passed away. And as I was researching ufology, I stumbled upon this report that your father had done about going to Newfield, New York, and doing this incredible sighting. And I kind of think, I say, oh my God, this is why he got so mad at me and other guys for not taking this seriously, in those days. Of course, we were talking about the 80s and stuff of that nature. So, I mean, it was just amazing to see that. And the captain was always telling us that you have to be very compassionate about this, not realizing that he was part of it. And so I just wanted to share that story with you, Paul, because your father was a great man.
Thank you. I'll see your story about my father with a story about my brother, Joel. Sev and Earl met Joel at a Hollywood Disclosure event. And Sev cajoled my fairly shy brother, Joel, into appearing with me on her and Earl's show. And Joel is a brilliant engineer, but a little bit shy. And I've been trying to coax him in more into public role in the UFO world. And right before the 2-hour show, Sev, I don't know if you know this, I said, Joel, I'm hardly going to answer any questions. It's all you. And he looks at me and says, no, Paulie, no. Okay, we're on. And I didn't answer many questions. I don't know if you remember that, Sev, but once he gets in his groove, he shines. And it was because you were able to convince him to appear, Sev, and he had a really good time.
Oh, thank you for telling me that. I didn't know that.
And he was a great radio host. People think doing radio is easy, and it's not. I mean, I started this about 5 years, and Martin can probably tell you he's been in it much longer than I have. And Katie, of course, does a great podcast, and we work together on another podcast. But I mean, how many times, Katie, we used to say, who are we going to get as a guest? What are we going to do for this next show? What are we going to add? And I go, I don't know, but Earl had some amazing guests. He was a great interviewer, and he did a fantastic podcast. And it was like, hey, this guy's really good. I should start listening to him. Maybe I can get some tips from him and stuff. And I was going, Martin, have you ever heard his podcast at all, what he did?
I did, yes. And he invited me on. It just never happened, unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, while I'm talking, if you don't mind.
No, go.
Okay, I just wanted to say that Greg Bishop really wanted to be on tonight because Earl meant a lot to him. And he had something planned. He couldn't make it tonight. So I just thought I'd say that. Also, that I'm really happy to see that Earl's family's here watching. I mean, isn't that wonderful? Really? I mean, his daughters and his son, Paul, and Lisa, it's just wonderful. And I'm really, really sorry for your loss. It must be monumental.
And I'd like to say something to the family, too. Though that Earl and I lived on different coasts, he was on the West Coast, and I was on the East Coast. Anytime we talked, your father was so gracious. And I have to tell you, I think because talking to him, I took this ufology more seriously. Because not only was he a person to talk to, but he was a teacher. And being a student, and still am a student of ufology, it was just a wonderful thing to be able to talk to your father and say, hey, what about this? Or what about that? And he would always have an answer for me, and he would always take my questions. And it was just a great feeling knowing that if I had a question or I had something I was stuck on, I could call Earl Grey Anderson and get an answer. So I want to just say to the family, first of all, my condolences. I'm very sorry for your loss. I know he's in peace. I hope that he sends Sev a message so we can all be happy about that and stuff. But I also want to say to the family that we're very sorry for your loss. All of us here, that your father was one of the finest men that ever walked the face of the earth, and God bless him. And I'll tell you, I mean that sincerely and stuff. And Dan, I think you wanted to say something. Okay.
I'd love to say something. First of all, I
gotta get a tissue.
Oh, you should see me with the tissues. You should see over here what's going on over here. I never had the honor to see Earl perform with a guitar and sing. I knew he was a musician. I'm a drummer. So we talked about, yes, we both loved the band, yes. But that song, you guys, when you played that song, it's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard. And that killed me just now. You see, it was so incredibly beautiful. I'm going to put that on the Wow Signal next week, and I'm going to sing it for my brother Earl. And I'll put a link to that song up there. But I did want to say something, if I could stop crying. Last year at Contact in the Desert, I hosted an HDA panel at Contact in the Desert. Paul was on the panel. Katie was on the panel. I was the moderator. Earl was on the panel. And everyone spoke about different topics. And I said, Earl, you got to tell the story about what happened when you were a little kid at school. And that has not yet come up tonight. That's why I'm bringing it up now. When Earl was, Paul, you'll fact check me on this. I think when Earl was about 5, he's eating breakfast with his mother. His mother worked for, as we know, the Howard Hughes, the man, not Howard Hughes, the man Howard Hughes, the actual man.
I didn't know that.
She worked for the man, the person, Howard Hughes. She knew all the top secret stuff, his mom. One day his mom is talking to Earl about extraterrestrials and the fact that they exist in real life. Okay. And I think the story, Earl's eating cereal or something. He's 5. The mom takes Earl to school. Now, the mom in the car goes, Earl, now, whatever you do, don't tell anyone what I just told you. It's top secret. Mommy will go to jail. Mommy will go to jail. You can't tell anyone. Okay, Mommy. Okay. So this is the story Earl told at that panel. Earl goes to school. A few hours later, the mom gets a call. You have to come to the school. Urgent. It's an emergency. You have to come. She probably figured Earl broke his arm in gym or something, right? She gets there. They said, whatever the mom's name was, your son is going around school telling people that aliens are real. And how dare he say such a ridiculous, stupid thing? What kind of parent are you? And we can't have Earl telling those kinds of stories in our school. In our school. So the mom had to take Earl home early from school. And the mom goes, Earl, I told you, Mommy could go to jail. Mommy could go to, you can't ever do that ever again. So I think that's one of the all-time great stories. God bless Earl. I love that story.
Dan, that's a wonderful story, and thank you for sharing that. We have some video clips I'd like to play for you guys that are some of our friends that are from MUFON. Bill, could you play Shane 1, please? No,
Well, I've just received the devastating news that Earl Grey had passed away. It's a shock. It really hurts. Our community has lost such a wonderful voice. Of course, my heart goes out to his wife, Lisa, and his children, and everybody who are friends with Earl. And that's a lot of people. One of the things you can say about Earl is the moment you meet him, you've got a fast friend just like that. And that's the way it worked for me. I first got in contact with Earl over Facebook when I began researching UFOs. This was between 2010 and 2015. And he was one of the people that kind of took me in under his wing, and he would confirm my expressions of understanding or belief about the UAP UFO phenomena, and he'd either set me straight or confirm, what I felt on the matter. And it was really important for me to get that kind of feedback and have that kind of relationships with someone at that time. And it's directly led to my involvement with MUFON and UFOs over the years. And it's something I just so appreciated. But more than that, Earl and I got to meet on multiple occasions at various symposiums and UFO conferences, and Alien Con. And we hung out. His wife, Lisa, my wife, Donna, hit it off as well. And we would pal around at these conferences, and we had dinner and drinks, and it was all reflective of just the kind of person Earl was. He was so positive. He was friendly. He really knew how to talk to people, and I think many people made progress in ufology as a direct result of Earl. And so, I just want to say I'm so sad that he's gone. Cancer is a horrible thing. And, it took him quick, and that's what the shock was. But he was so positive right up to the very end. And so I just want to say that, we can recover from this, but we don't want to forget Earl. And for me, he was an inspiration. And, I'm going to apply myself in the things I learned from him. He was a stickler on details for UFO investigations. But again, his kindness is it. That if you looked up kindness in the dictionary, it'd have Earl's picture. It should. And that's my remembrance of him, and my commitment to be a kind person and to treat others with the dignity and respect that he treated others. And again, Earl, wherever you are, I hope you're getting the answers that you want and need. And I look forward someday to seeing you again.
Wow. Thank you, Shane, for that. Everything he said is exactly what we're saying here. He's a great light in this world and stuff. But one of the things about Earl, and I think all of us who've done UFO investigations, is how thorough you have to be. And Earl was one of those guys who was very thorough when it came to doing investigations, either if an experienced investigation or if it was a regular investigation, a sighting, whatever. But he was a stickler on making sure it was done right. And if you didn't know, he was happy to help you. Like George said before, he never said no to you. Never said that. Now, Dan, I want to go back to you because, I've been taking up a lot of time. Is there any questions you want to have to our guests?
I'd like to know if anyone knows how Earl got into ufology. I know that he had an experience, but I've never heard his backstory that caused him to become so active in assisting people. Anybody know?
Who do you want to start with, Dan?
You told me, but I forgot.
George, how about you?
Me? Oh, Earl just appeared one day. That's all I know.
Earl was an alien. That's
it's just like an alien, right? Came through a portal.
Earl was an alien.
George, I want to join.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea what got him interested in it. Probably just his background, but he never sat down and explained it to me.
Huh.
I don't know if he ever did to anybody.
Yeah, I remember Earl telling me that he had a connection to the beings since he was a little boy. And then, of course, the experience we just talked about with his mother working for Howard Hughes in the mysterious underground base, and his ET contact and experiences throughout his life. And so just like many of us in the field, I think that hooked him from a really early age. Wouldn't you guys agree, Kathleen and Sev? That's how I know it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Katie, you were doing some projects with Earl. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'm sitting here through this wonderful honor to Earl and how he touched all of us so deeply. And I'm trying to put my finger on it. And I can say that I will keep Earl with me, because in this world where everybody has like a 2-second attention, there's two men in this field of ufology. And with all the infighting and the grifting and all this that goes on all the time, there's two men that I will hold with me every single day moving forward. And that includes the project I was working on with Earl. And I am going to dedicate anything I do with this underground base at Mount Wilson in Earl's honor. And he's going to be pushing me from the other side to continue the work. And I'm telling his family and his kids and his Lisa and his kids that I'm going to continue Earl's work, and I'm going to dedicate it to him. And I will not give up now. I got a fire under my belly to get to the bottom of that. So look out. But the time, so Dr. Leo Sprinkle was a dear friend and a hypnotherapist, and now Earl Grey Anderson, these two are like angels. And what it is, and what I can pinpoint now, is they gave their time. And in this crazy world we're in right now, there's nothing more valuable than people's time, their ear, their friendship, their empathy, their light, their love. And I will continue every day of my life to try and follow in their footsteps, Dr. Sprinkle and Earl Grey Anderson, the two angels that were so giving of their time. And that's what this world is missing right now.
I think that anybody who's been involved in ufology for some time has their views evolve over time. You may, over the years, you may have had opinions change as to what they are. For the last year of his life, if any of you had interaction with him, did he put forth a changed opinion or idea as to who or what the NHI is?
I think a little bit. I think him and I talked a lot about, people you can trust and people you can't trust, meaning like Black Access Projects, what's buried underground, what's being hidden. We have pictures from connecting both Dr. Leo Sprinkle and Earl Grey Anderson and his mom in Mount Wilson in the 80s. There are all these key players out there. And it's interesting. I just kind of made Jacques Vallée a little uncomfortable, because I asked him, I'm like, we have photographs of Mount Wilson Ranch with, Bob Bigelow and Jacques Vallée. So Earl and I would talk about, these players that were out there and what were they doing and how put off and what's going on and what's the big secret. So Earl and I had some interesting conversations. And I think his mind was kind of, changed, like many of us. The more we learn and the more we know, sometimes our opinions change. And so we had some really good conversations about how much of it is paranormal and actual ET, and what was this other thing going on, and what are they covering up, and what happened to Howard Hughes in the end. So interesting conversations with that as well.
Yeah. Didn't he have like a secret lab or something under his pool?
Yeah, rumored. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I know his mom.
What's that?
I was going to say, I think Earl's mom, Earl told me that for many, many years towards the end of Howard Hughes's life, nobody saw him. Like, even if you worked one-on-one like Earl's mother did, you did not see and interact with Howard Hughes directly. But his mother did catch a glimpse of him turning, and she wasn't supposed to. And Earl told me about that story, like, but she did get to see Howard Hughes in that. So there's a lot of that secret keeping. And I don't know if that's part of what made Howard Hughes really kind of, spiral down towards the end of his life there. What did he encounter? What did he witness?
Yeah, they said he became very estranged,
exclusive,
in his last years of his life, that he was living underneath a swimming pool. I'm not sure I want to do that, but I guess when you had that money. Yes, Dan, go ahead.
I just remembered a story Earl told. I have a podcast called Live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight weekly. In fact, several of you people have already been on my show. Thank you. I interviewed Earl last year. Earl tells a story. He said his kids, I'm going to butcher the facts here. I'm going to kill and butcher the facts. But Earl told the story on my podcast. When he was a little kid, he was in a very bad car accident. And I honestly, I don't remember the details, but I think the car went over an embankment and down a ways and crashed, and it was bad. And Earl said, and I'm getting chills right now, I'm getting the chills. Earl said some force of paranormal nature pulled Earl through. There was one open back window in the car. It pulled him through this window safely onto the ground. Had that not happened, he would have been crushed. There was like this, I think there was like a safe or some huge piece of equipment in the car or the van, and had this force of nature pulled him gently out of the window onto the ground, this thing would have slammed into him in the car and would have killed him. So I just remembered that just now. It was from a year ago. I hope his family can give me the details, but Earl was blessed. I mean, Earl had the connection without question. Man was blessed, and we were blessed by his friendship. But I just thought that was quite a story.
It's a great story, Dan. I mean, if anybody's going to get angel wings, it's going to be Earl.
Yes,
and
exactly.
and that's what Martin, you were going to say something, and I wanted to let you finish your thought. Was there something you wanted to say?
No, but I did. I think it was Dan may have said this, that Earl called him and said, I got a book to write. And I understand that feeling. I mean, we can all talk about empathy. We can all empathize that we all have so much we want to do. That's how I feel. Like I have too much to do. I can't die. And so I could just picture how Earl was feeling, because I have a feeling he felt the same way. And, we're all going to be there. But anyway, it just kind of struck me when you said that, Dan, because I got that right away. Like that would be my first reaction. I can't go. I got too much to go. I haven't been to Australia yet, all that stuff.
And the funny thing is that Earl never, I mean, possibly in his last time in life, he might have put out there, but I've watched him walk in with a cane and a walker and stuff. Never said a word that he was in pain. Never said a word that he was ill. He never did. That was the most amazing thing. I'd be sitting there telling him at the bar, "Oh my God, my hip's killing me, my knee's killing me."
And you're not even, and Chris, you're not even Jewish. Chris, you're not even Jewish, and you would have been.
Yeah, I know. And boy,
you should hear my mother. Oi, my back, my ass, my boobs. You should hear Jewish people
and stuff. But I mean, nothing ever came out of Earl. I mean, I'm sitting there telling him, "Oh my God, I'm a walking specimen for an orthopedic surgeon," and Earl is like, "Oh yeah, geez, I feel sorry for you, Chris," and he's the one that I should be saying, "Oh, geez, is there anything I could do for you?" and stuff. But I want to ask Kathleen something, because I think this is, I'm a very spiritual person, and I think a lot of you people know that. You couldn't tell by my personality, but I am a very spiritual person. And Kathleen, I don't believe that when you pass away, you're just gone. I mean, I think that you're become more whole with the universe, or there's another thing after we pass on. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we had that discussion before.
Yes, I can. I was a past life regressionist, and I've had a long time interest in this topic. And passing on from what I personally have experienced with people who have passed, who have come to me, and many have, they hang around for maybe 3 days, and you might hear their voice, you might smell their scent, they might appear to you as an orb. Stan Friedman appeared to me as an orb. There was a little tiny orb under my covers the other night, and I was turning over and I saw this little light down there, and I was going, "Oh, that must be a light shining in from the outside." And then I checked, and no, it wasn't. And so I'm still wondering if that was Earl who was down there. I don't know. It was the craziest thing. But, your consciousness survives the death of the physical body. Your soul survives that death. Now, you can decide that you want to be earthbound. If you feel that you have not completed your mission here, you might not move on. You might make that decision to stay. Or then you might make the decision to go to the light, that's what most people would say, but to move on beyond the physical body onto the place where you will go, where you will initially meet your family, and then you'll move on to your soul group, and then you will go through a pure process of learning. And if you want to come back eventually, you'll have that opportunity to come back. But if you don't, you don't have to. There's always a lesson. You've all heard about karma, the karmic lesson of what you learned in this life, and did you succeed? Did you overcome some kind of karmic debt from your past life? Because every life is a learning experience. And when you're having these discussions, when you're in the higher realms with your soul groups, then you keep no secrets. Everyone knows in your group everything about you. Here we can keep secrets. There you cannot. And so it's just a process of examining your life and what you did well, what you could do better, and whether eventually you want to come back to this planet to learn more. Because, well, this is a personal belief, but I believe that you can move on to higher realms, to higher dimensions, that you don't have to be stuck in this third dimensional realm where you have illness and you have war and the kinds of things that we suffer on this planet. But that's the understanding that I've come to after many years of research and experience and investigation, experimentation with this kind of thing.
Sev, did you want to add on to that?
Regarding Earl's belief system?
No, in regards to we just don't dissipate. We still become part of going on.
Yeah. Well, energy doesn't die. It might transform, but it keeps on going. And we'd like to think that Earl will come back. And actually, Kathy and I were having this discussion last week about maybe people coming in as walk-ins. And so who knows? Maybe Earl will come into as a walk-in to somebody and continue his work.
That'd be fantastic. That's great. We have another recording that I want to play. Bob Spearing couldn't be with us tonight, but he did have a recording. Bill, could you play Bob Spearing's recording?
Hi, everybody. My name is Bob Spearing, and I'm honored to get a couple of minutes to talk about our good friend Earl Grey Anderson that we lost this week. With condolences to his family. I know they loved him very much, and we did too at MUFON. There's some things that I had some great stories about Earl, and I can tell you some things that Earl did for MUFON over the years that nobody really knows about. He was very, very involved with our symposium team. He was constantly giving suggestions to Marketa Klimova, our symposium director, and she always used those suggestions because they were excellent. He would be involved with the Friday afternoon presentations, the experiencer workshops on Saturday and Sunday, and the ERT cases of interest presentation on Sunday. So he did a lot of stuff other than investigating and being the Southern State Director for MUFON in California. I have three stories that I always remember him telling me, and I don't want him to be lost to time, so I figured that this is a great opportunity to tell people. 4 or 5 symposiums ago, I was sitting in the lobby with him at the hotel, and he told me about his mom's work at a secret U.S. military base that was about 18 levels down below the surface of the Earth in the southwestern United States. And he told me one thing that I thought was fascinating and funny at the same time. And he says, "Can you believe it, Bob?" He said that his mother said she'd get off the elevator 18 floors down under the ground at this facility, and they had a McDonald's. And that just blew my mind that, McDonald's had a restaurant at a secret U.S. military site deep under the earth. Another thing that Earl and I used to talk about were portals. If anybody ever saw the Ancient Aliens episode all about MUFON, Earl had a segment where he gets to tell his abduction story, where the wall of his room began to open like a spiral galaxy, and these beings came through the wall. He was only able to give a snippet of the story in the MUFON episode, but it was a fascinating and terrifying story because he told me the whole story. And we used to go back and forth. I was into sky portals with the sky opening up and triangles coming out of the sky, and he was into bedroom portals where entities and machines, believe it or not, would come out of people's walls and abduct them or experiment on them. A fascinating but dark episode in his life. He was also a great guitar player, and I don't know how many people knew that, but the level of friendship that I had with him most was actually outside of the UFO arena. Earl and I grew up with 70s progressive rock, Pink Floyd, Genesis, Jethro Tull, Uriah Heep. And I don't think anybody knows this, but he was very, very, very good friends with the late bassist from the band Yes, Chris Squire. And Earl would tell me a lot of stories about what really goes on in the world of rock and roll based on his friendship with Chris Squire. So anyway, I just wanted to get those stories out about Earl because he was fascinating on so many levels. But the thing that people will remember Earl most for would be his character. Okay, when people are outpouring all of this love this week, it really shows you that in the long run, he won't be remembered for necessarily what he did for the UFO community, but rather for the content of his character. He was a very kind and spiritual kind of fellow, and it always reminds me of the Beatle lyric from Abbey Road, in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And Earl gave us all a lot of love, and I personally will miss him a lot.
Wow, great
Very
words.
nice. Very nice.
And stuff. Well, we're bringing down time, and I want to get this last video in before we have our closing statements. Bill, could you play Dave Scott?
Earl Grey was somebody who was literally one of the nicest people you would ever meet in the UFO world. The one thing that I knew about Earl in the few years that I knew him about 7-8 years, was that he never had a bad word to say about anybody. It didn't matter whether you disagreed with him when it came to UFOs, UAP, whatever you want to call them, or if you were an experiencer who was just begging to try and find any sort of answer. He treated everybody with respect. I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Earl about 3 times on Spaced Out Radio. We talked a few more times on the phone privately, just in private UFO conversations. And the one thing that Earl was very good at was he was very good at giving honest, direct answers. You may not have liked it, you may not have agreed with it, but it was from his heart. And when he picked up the phone in order to say hello, and I would say, "Hey, it's Dave Scott," Earl would be like, "Dave, how you doing?" Like, it was all about asking about how the family is, how's life going, how's the radio show. It was just absolutely great. There's a reason why, if you look at any interview with Earl, that he's smiling and he's having a great time. He loved this subject. He loved UFOs. He loved experiencers. He loved being part of this community. It's what gave him oxygen to breathe. The sad part about it is that oxygen has run out. And unfortunately, that evil killer called cancer has claimed his life, but his spirit is still there. And Earl gave us a lot. whether it was bringing out major reports on UFOs and alien abductions and contact, or whether it was just being a decent human being. I loved the man. And, you know, when I would go to UFO conferences and we would talk about Earl Grey, I never heard anybody have anything bad to say about him. It would be like, oh, you know Earl? Yeah, I know Earl. And it was like you'd get into this conversation about what a great human being he was. There are very few people in this world, let alone the UFO world, that you could actually have that type of interaction with where everybody absolutely loves you. And that was Earl Grey. He did his best. He tried his hardest. And personally, I think he made a difference.
Wow.
Wow. So we're just about out of time, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around to everybody here, their final thoughts. And I'll start with Sev.
Oh, thank you.
Your final thoughts.
Yeah, basically, it is all about the energy that you give out, because ultimately he's affected this planet and the galaxies and far beyond just by radiating the love that he had, and that affects each and every single one of us forever.
It does. Thank you, Sev, and thank you for being here tonight. Paul, your final thoughts.
I said it before, and only thing I can think of to say is that Earl was my friend.
God bless you. Thank you for that. Kathleen.
Earl was a blessing in my life. I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to know such a kind and compassionate man with such a level of knowledge and just love for everyone and everything. He was incredible.
Thank you. Martin.
Well, I couldn't help but smile every time I faced Earl. You know, every time I was face to face with him because of his contagious smile. And, you know, we've lost a lot of people in the UFO community in the last few years. This one really hit hard.
It did.
Like it can't be, you know, like there was hope when he first started talking about his daughter first posted about his cancer and like he wouldn't be on for a while, but it looks good. Or maybe he posted, I believe he did on Facebook, that maybe he'll be back. You know, it looks really good. And then all of a sudden, 4:40 in the morning, you know, his daughter posted that post, and it's like, oh, it was like it just ruined my day. You know, I mean, it was really sad. But thank you.
You got it, and thank you for being here, Martin. Katie.
I want to make a T-shirt with Earl's smile, because there's so many of us out there that just need to live like Earl. Be kind to others like Earl. And I'm going to take that with me every day. You know, there's so much that we all could just be kinder and happier and greet people with a smile. So as I walk through contact in the desert this year, I'm going to have Earl's energy hopefully around me and that bubble of just that light and love that he did. And I think if we all could do that and treat everybody like Earl did, this is a testimony to what he gave to all of us in his friendship. And that's huge. That's the best you can do in this world. So carry Earl in your heart. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Katie. George.
Earl, I'm very sad that you're gone, but I'm very glad that I knew you.
Thank you very much for that, George. And Dan?
Yep.
You can wrap it up.
Sure. I became a student of ufology in 2007. It's when I joined MUFON, 2007. But I didn't get invited really into this world until exactly 2 years ago by three men, Stephen Bassett, my brother Paul Hynek, and Earl Grey Anderson. They invited me into this universe, and it has changed my life for the better in so many ways. I've had so many opportunities to make lovely friends. I love so many people that I've met in the last 2 years. But I only knew Earl for 2 years. And I saw him in the 2 years. I saw him at countless MUFON meetings, Hollywood Disclosure Alliance meetings, and at Contact in the Desert. We always hugged. We had drinks together. We had meals together. I didn't know him perhaps as well as Paul or Katie or Sev or Kathleen. But in my brief 2 years, this man, he enriched my life. He enriched the lives of all of his friends. And I loved Earl. And I wish his family love and peace, and he made all of our lives a better place.
Thank you, Dan, for those heartwarming words. I'm actually getting a little emotional. Anyways, Padre.
I think that Katie has a very valid suggestion. Get some T-shirts made and put Earl's picture on it and simply live like Earl. What better way to carry forth his memory? And people would come up and say, who's Earl? And then we can tell them about Earl.
I could do that through the HDA, actually. I could do that in HDA. We have a merchandise section now. I could do that.
We could all be Earlies.
Early.
Earlies. Hey, I like that,
you early?
Paul.
Look like
We
Earl.
can be Earlies. That's a great idea, Paul. Well, I want to play one last video, and then I'll have my closing remarks. Bill, could you play Heidi Hollis's recording?
Hi, I'm Heidi Hollis, and I wanted to give my kindest condolences to the family and friends and anybody who's ever been enlightened or laughed at a joke that our friend Earl Grey dished out to the world. I was fortunate enough to be greeted by him and became fast chatting and talking on the phone friends, and actually got to join him on Alien Disclosure Files, the TV series, and he's just been such a joy to know. And I think if everybody in this field of ufology or even the paranormal sciences kept that kind of joy and enthusiasm and knowledge, I think we'd get a lot further in this field. I have not come across many people like Earl, and he will be dearly missed. And I think a lot of people will grow having had him in the world, and I just wish him and his family peace and tranquility and the best during this very difficult time. But no, he was loved, seriously loved. And what a blessing to have had him for as long as we did.
Wow.
All great
Anyways,
stuff.
I just want to say my closing remarks. First of all, to the family, we're very sorry for your loss. As you can see, Earl was loved by all of us here. He was a kind, compassionate, and well gentleman as far as the eye could see. He was an amazing person. He was a person that we all loved. And, there won't be another Earl around for a long, long time. And the world's a little less different without Earl in it, because we all miss him, but we have his memory, and he was such a true believer, and we all believed in him, because everything that he said to us, everything he meant to us, it really touched all of our hearts. And so with that, I thank the greatest audience in the world for sharing tonight with us to the celebration of Earl's life and his passing, and just keep his family and him in your hearts. And we're going to finish with Earl's tribute. I think that's there, Bill, and we'll say goodnight after that.
Earl, welcome.
Hi there. How are you doing, Marden? It's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you. I really enjoyed hanging out with you and your talks that you did in Texas. I thought you did a wonderful presentation, and
I had so much fun. I enjoyed myself, that's for sure. And
I got to tell you, you are really loved by the UFO community. I could really see that by the reactions of people around you, and they really, really look up to you, and you're really highly respected, and you could really tell that. And you got that smile. I like that smile. You always have that smile. But
thank you.
And you're also
I love what I do.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm also going to talk about you're a musician and a nice one. And at the end of this show, with the very tail end, I got a sample of your clip. It's a partial song that I had to shorten it up a bit. But so thank you so much, Earl.
Thank you, Marden.
All right. And we'll be talking soon. Take care.
woods in the stream, hoping for what's true. I'm trawling for honor in this shallow pool. Borealis starlit crown arches over the Puget Sound. Berenice's hair drapes the horizon. Where is my lucky star tonight? Seventh sister of the play.